Yeah, I saw you.
I don't sit down there, but there's probably one.
So I think I saw you in Ryan doing something.
No, yeah. Nice stuff out there. So I don't know what later.
There we go.
You're looking too much at heavy work today.
No.
Good morning and welcome to the September 1st, first day of September. Welcome everybody to the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Office Policy Board meeting. Call us to order. And Mr. Thornton, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Quick, again, welcome everybody, and I have a quick introduction to make. Trinity? Hello. Trinity Waldron is a VCU Wilder Fellow that is with us for this school year with the TPO staff. She's being mentored by Barbara Jaycox, and I think your focus is going to be on transportation planning liaison, primarily working with the rural counties. You take 30 seconds and introduce yourself to everybody.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, like you said, my name is Trinity Waldron. I'm originally from Brewery, Virginia, if you all know where that's from. So this is my first year and a half here in Richmond. I'm still getting used to the area. But I did my undergrad at Virginia Tech, and now I'm getting my master's degree in urban and regional planning at VCU.
Well, thank you. And I didn't tell Trinity I was going to put you on the spot, so good job. Thank you and welcome. Okay, Ms. Firestone, let us know, roll call.
Yes. Town of Ashland, Mr. Hodges. Ms. Barnhart. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Mr. Holland.
Here.
Mr. Winslow.
Here.
Ms. Carroll. Richland County Chair Lumpkins.
Here.
Ms. Lascalette.
Here.
Hanover County Vice Chair Peterson.
Here.
Mr. Davis. Ms. Pritchard. Henrico County, Ms. O'Bannon.
Here.
Mr. Thornton.
Here.
Mr. Brannon. New Kent County, Ms. Page. Mr. Tiller. Mr. Evelyn. Powhatan County, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Ms. Carmack. City of Richmond, Mr. Addison.
Here.
Ms. Jordan. Ms. Lynch. Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Jones. Ms. Larson. Ms. Robertson. Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. GRTC, Ms. Adams. Ms. Torres.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean. Vdot, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblett. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Firestone. All right, policy board members, are there any requests for amendments to the meeting agenda? Any change of order or any comments or questions? And Mr. Parsons, that's directed to you as well. Are there any requests? We have an agenda then, hearing no amendments requested. We have an agenda. We'll dive into the approval of We didn't meet in July. We'll dive into the approval of our July 7th policy board minutes. The chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Was that Dr. Newbill? Yeah.
Yes, as second.
Thank you. And Dr. Newbill, you had your hand raised a little bit ago, but I think you took that down. You didn't have a question, did you?
No, I did. I could not hear initially, but that was addressed, so.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
also could not hear, and I am hearing now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. O'Bannon. We heard you on the roll call too, so we have you here. Thank you.
All right.
So there's a motion that's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? It passes unanimously. We'll now go to the open public comment period. Anybody here from the public wishing to address the policy board member, please come forward now. And I think it's 3 minutes that we allow. And Ms. Firestone, you'll keep the time if we.
Yes.
And nobody's
No
on
one
the
has
line.
indicated now.
Okay. All right. I'll close the public comment period and we'll move to the chair's comments, or chair's report, rather. Just a few things. In our last meeting, not last month, but our last meeting in July, we had a change in chairmanship, and I'm honored to be serving. And I thanked David Williams from Powhatan last time, but we're doing a little more formally here. We have a gift for him. It's got your name on it, the transportation planning, and it's not something to, again, express our appreciation for your leadership last year. Oh, here, we got a photo.
Let me get out of the middle of it.
Come on, Vice Chair. Vice Chair, we got the Vice Chair. All right, thank you. Thank you again, Dave.
Nova just told me it's not liquid, so. Y'all have heard me say this before, but you're a talented group of people around this table that are doing the planning, doing the transportation for Central Virginia. I couldn't be more proud of you, and I couldn't be more proud to be a part of you. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you again. So, as you all know, we did not have the executive committee meeting this morning, but I do plan to have an executive committee meeting in October. But one of the things that I would ask the executive committee to consider being the focus of next month's meeting is to just review the role of the executive committee. When you look at our bylaws in Article 7, and in my experience on the board, a lot of the executive committee meetings have been really a preliminary review of what's coming up at the policy board meeting. So I started looking into this and talked to Mr. Parsons about it, and I think the staff is supporting us, at least the executive committee, looking into its role a little bit and looking at the bylaws. Where it's going, I don't know, but I thought we could look at maybe reducing the number of the meetings, maybe looking at the role. When I looked at the powers, the powers the executive committee are given, whatever this board gives it, but right now it's except for one minor item, it's all just make recommendations. So I hope folks will join us at the executive committee members will join us in October, and we'll be ready to discuss maybe a little bit dive into the role of the executive committee, and maybe that executive committee can come back to the policy board with some thoughts and suggestions or recommendations. We'll see where it goes. But October, the executive committee will meet at 8:30. I have one other comment, I'll come back to that later. One of the things that I hope to do during my year here is take a few minutes at the beginning of each meeting and highlight one of the jurisdictions. So you can see from there, it's Charles City's on tap for today. So I pedaled my tail off all the way out from Rockets Landing to Charles City, and it's a little ways out there when you don't plan ahead and know how far it is, and you realize you also have to pedal back. But there it is, and the sign is not backwards just because of my camera. I was thinking, is that the best low bid we'll buy for an entrance sign? But it's just the camera. But yeah, That's after 25 miles, that's why I don't look so good. But here, Mr. Atkins has agreed to present a little bit, and what I'm hoping to do is 2 or 3 minutes, and just tell us something of interest, something going on, or maybe something that'll help us if we ever in a Trivial Pursuit, with regionally themed Trivial Pursuit game. So thank you for being willing to share with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Lumpkin and distinguished persons present. Thank you for this opportunity to give highlights of some attractions to Charles City, and that's about Charles City's effort to attract vendors and services and visitors, including the Capitol Trail, Milk and Honey Brewery, and efforts to attract national and retail venues. Next. We're coming along. I'll keep going. One thing we'd like to highlight is Rivers Rest Marina and Resort represents a multi-million-dollar investment in rehab and to restore prominence in the community, especially in District 3. Today's Rivers Rest Marina and Resort is a 16-acre family-friendly travel destination that offers a 64-boat slip marina, tackle store, 126 seasonal RV, and tiny homes, 10 tiny homes. And we offer adventurous, easy access to a waterfront getaway, 21 unit housing, premier eatery, and the Blue Heron. Next. Additional development features include a dog park, playground, marine store, refueling station, pool, lodge, and a picnic area. Next. We would also like to thank the county's interest in broadband expansion and to identify ways to provide high-speed internet access to targeted areas and seek expansion in services in underserved areas, in particular District 3. We would like to thank for our county has been advised to support grant efforts to extend water and sewer infrastructure along Roxbury Road, which supports an additional strategic priority to develop Roxbury corridor for industry, manufacturing, and retail use. Next. We're very proud of our Heritage Library. Prior to the development of this library, Charles City County was the only jurisdiction in the Commonwealth of Virginia without a public library. Next. Capitol Trail, a recent economic impact assessment prepared for the Capitol Trail Foundation noted that the economic development for the county would be more than one people or tourists coming through the county. We do have a couple things that's coming in the future. We have a new food pantry facility that will be open for commercial kitchens, food storage areas, and we hope to support at least 700 families monthly and share this space with a variety of human service activities that include workforce development. The food pantry will be a one-stop shopping access for local and state resources and is planned to facilitate that will be open for human resource agencies to offer services to constituents in one-stop shopping. Next. This is the site location of a new venture that's coming into the county, which is close to the government complex. That's John Tyler Memorial Highway. You can see the courthouse, and the site is to the right on the back trail. Next. What we'll be offering, which we're calling Market 5, which is a new initiative on the development of a venue that will be elected flexible retail with public engagement. Next. Here we are with our improvements as relates to solar panel development on 3,000 acres, which is already in the county. Next. This is the site that we will be opening up as soon as possible that was dedicated by AES for our next coming up adventure, which will be a fire station, 10,000 square feet, which will serve up in the Roxbury industrial area. Next. Beyond that, we do have a new venture for those that are thirsty after they've been on the bike trail, which will be the Charles City Brewery. which is located in a former government building in the area. Next. We do have a couple of ribbon cuttings that's coming up. A Breeze Inn is located right off Route 5, right by the Capitol Trail, bike trail. And coming soon, which is actually here, is a second Dollar General store that will provide 10,000 square feet of food storage and will have a official grand opening on September 19th. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to give you an overview of Charles City County, the oasis of Planning District 15. And thank you, Sid, for your kindness. Janice, somewhere, thank you. And I appreciate the senior staff with the county government. Thank you.
Thank you,
Very
Mr.
nice.
I appreciate it. You look pretty good there in front of the sign on the.
And that was the far end at the end of the bike trail, on the other end at the Chickahominy, which is exactly, I think, about 26 miles from where you start.
I don't think I could have made it all the way to. Good, thanks so much. All right, we'll dive right in and keep moving. I think Mr. Parsons, you're up next with the Secretary's report.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Starting on page 26 of your agenda is the current work efforts that our staff is involved with. As you know, we are a kind of cyclical planning process kind of agency, so a lot of the work that we do is continuing functions related to certain tasks, like the Active Transportation Work Group is working right now with East Coast Greenway on updating designated sections of the trail through the Richmond region. And we are working through that organization to help develop the Ashland Trolley Line Trail Study, which now includes a couple of story maps, which are digital maps and guides highlighting the history of the trolley line, as well as a design sketchbook that is being developed with the help of the National Park Service to provide some insight into what the trolley line may look like with interpretive signage and other features that would be a great experience as you travel through that historic corridor. The Cbta continues to roll forward. We have now, through the authority, dedicated 2 rounds of regional funding to very significant projects across the region, one of which is later on the agenda today. And now we are gearing up for the next round consideration and looking at the framework and the guidelines for what should be considered a regional project, and making some revisions to that based on the experience that we've had through these first 2 rounds. So staff is excited to continue supporting the authority and really taking the work that this body does as the planning agency for the region and finding ways to implement those projects in a more expedited fashion. We are excited to be embarking on a couple new ventures with GRTC. One is kind of a partnership with the Cbta to look at microtransit across the entire 9 jurisdiction region, which would expand services for transit beyond the fixed route service that GRTC currently provides as its majority service, and extend out into all 9 jurisdictions to provide those last mile services to the residents that need it. So that study is wrapping up over the next month or 2, and we're excited to see where that goes. And we'll talk about a couple other planning projects that GRTC and Plan RVA have talked about to think about BRT expansion and providing improvements to the existing transit service through the region. So with that, Mr. Chair, I can move on to the next item unless there's any questions on the current work efforts.
I had one question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When you spoke about regionalism, are we expanding the definition of regional projects in the Cbta, or are we narrowing it?
I think that's a good question, Mr. Winslow. I think that the effort right now is to better define what is a regional project to best serve the needs of all 9 jurisdictions. through the first round, or round two, the one that the CBTA approved in April, we were able to identify, the prioritization process is very data driven. So refining those data sets and understanding what is signifying a regional project. The TAC is deep in the weeds on that right now and is planning on continuing that conversation next week. So that's not really a good answer.
I didn't say it.
Well, it does kind of prompt follow-up, I think. Is regional being redefined? What fits, is it, are you looking to redefine what is a regional project?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to ask Mr. Gregory a question. What does the enabling legislation say?
I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head, but I'll be happy to look into it and work with Mr. Parsons to better understand that.
And I'd like to go to Mr. Carroll because Mr. Carroll has spoke to the legislation numerous times at CBTA and at this body, talking about what it says. So Mr. Winslow's question is a good question. Of course, he's a lawyer.
Mr. Carroll, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It is an interesting question. I will tell you that in the first 2 years of the CBTA, collectively, everybody who worked together on what the prioritization will look like, the TAC worked very hard. The legislation is flexible, and so much so that it allows for, even if a prioritization list is developed, the CBTA, because the legislation still has the flexibility built into it to say, yep, that's the prioritization, but we're going to make this project or these projects a priority as well. So there's flexibility that's left in there. I think that was put there in there on purpose. And so, there will be discussions about if we need to narrowly define it more or not. I mean, I think the legislation is pretty flexible in the way it is set up. Would you agree with that, Mr. Former Chair?
I would, and Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
One of the things with the inception of the CBTA was to make sure that we create an organization in which each locality felt that it was respected. And I think the category of the flexibility item helps us. But as we go in the future, as Mr. Carroll said, we can better define these things. But it was help us in the beginning, and we are still growing and expect great things out of CBTA.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Peterson.
Could I just follow up on that? The perfect example is the biggest project that we've started already is the Fall Line project. But as part of that, there were smaller projects in the jurisdictions that the Fall Line does not go through that were also included from the regional funds of the CBTA. So it may be a local project, but if it is still tied to the total region. And so it is a very flexible approach, but it has to be to make sure everybody receives proper revenue.
Mr. Williams, let me come to you after Dr. Newbill has had her hand up. Dr. Newbill?
Yes, this is just a really quick question for Mr. Parsons. He mentioned in his report a regional market value analysis. And I was just wanting to get some sense of when that will be completed and if we will have access to that document upon completion.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Newbill. Hold your answer on that and let's continue the discussion. Mr. Williams.
This is a question for Mr. Gregory and Mr. Winslow. Going back to the original question, the legislation says, in the local long-range transportation plan or in the long-range transportation plan of the TPO, then it gives you that ability either way. Now, I'm trying to understand what the goal is may be included. Are we looking to redefine that in any way where the possible inclusion can come from the two sources, but at the same time, you're gonna overlay it with the CBT guidelines for prioritization and selection. Is that what we're doing?
Well, that's a great question, and I have concerns that that's the direction we're going, because as I think to the point of your question is, if it is prioritization driven and it's data driven and staff comes up with a model that slots the projects and then that comes before us, that becomes the default answer in front of these bodies that we then have to combat or potentially try to change in some way to the extent that we don't necessarily agree with the said prioritization. So I think it's a fair, that's exactly the direction I'm going in, Mr. Williams.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, you know, there have been changes that have been done by the General Assembly, you know, for example, Northern Virginia. I mean, if there's changes that need to be made, are we looking at bringing this back to the General Assembly for changes to the enabling legislation?
Necessarily.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I can address this. It's okay.
Yeah.
So
We don't need the lawyer, go ahead.
the legislation clearly states that the prioritization process for the CBTA has to be data driven and is at the discretion of the authority. That's the way we want it. We don't want to involve the General Assembly anymore. And that's the way we are moving forward. The authority is fully equipped through the Technical Advisory Committee to continue to refine that process. The driver here, I think, in the most part, is the available funding. To your point just now, the TPO, this body, defines a broad set of priorities through a data-driven process. Those priorities are in the hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of the overall scope of what the TPO sets out in its long-range plan. The authority does not have that budget at this point. The authority has taken that broad set of priorities through 4 time bands out 20 years and has refined that into a set of more stringent, regionally significant projects that it considers for funding. That framework was developed through the Technical Advisory Committee, was recommended by the Technical Advisory Committee, was workshopped through the authority, was approved by the authority. And that's the guidance that TAC is now looking at to say, do we need to tweak the annual traffic volumes that are considered for a roadway to be an eligible regionally significant project? Those are the kinds of adjustments that the TAC is looking at right now. It's not any type of wholesale change in legislation or removing or adding a different category. It's refining the details in that framework. So that's what TAC has started working on this summer and continues to work on at least through this month.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to Mr. Parsons. So Mr. Peterson pointed at the Fall Line project, you know, enable the smaller jurisdictions that weren't part of the Fall Line project to fund local projects that were in their long-range transportation plan.
Yes.
So if we're going to a prioritization where, you know, you're saying that, you know, you're going to be doing this based on budgets and things like that, data-driven, what does that mean for the smaller jurisdictions in terms of our ability to have a seat at the table to get funding for local projects that are in our long-range transportation plan, not unlike what we just talked about with, you know, the Fall Line project? That's a good example. So if you're moving to the larger projects on a regional basis, where will this leave the smaller jurisdictions in the funding of their projects that they have in their local long-range transportation plan? That's my question.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think the answer to that is the TAC is fully considering those types of questions and has raised those concerns itself. And that's part of the discussion that is being looked at in the framework right now. So how to involve all 9 jurisdictions in that process and to define the types of eligible projects for CBTA funding.
Okay, the last comment, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. You've heard me say this before, the members sitting around this table, the elected officials need to be hugging that person that's representing them on the technical advisory. Okay?
There's different ones,
Nobody's trying to make.
Not now, not now.
They got a lot going on in Hanover if you haven't noticed.
Yes. All right, well, good discussion. Thank you, Mr. Parsons, for that summary. Now, before we leave and go to the next slide, can you field Dr. Newbill's question?
Yes, the market value analysis is a project that is underway through the Regional Commission, through the Plan RVA Board. I am not fully aware of the status of it, but I know that it is nearing completion, and that it is going to be fully available to anyone who is interested. I think we're really excited about it. I know that the Plan RVA Board is very excited about the results of that and its utility across the region. So I can certainly follow up and get you more information on that, Dr. Newbill, after the meeting today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on that one? You're up next on.
Yes, real quick on item 5B, this is a new fiscal year. I apologize, we do not have the work status and financial report completed for your review. We will have that with our new budget numbers included, and we'll distribute that individually after the meeting for your review. This is the first month. July will be the first month of the year, so we had to reset our budget. We have a new finance director on board who is doing some great things and putting us on the right track, and incorporating all those things has caused a delay in the report. So I apologize for that. The last item under the Secretary's report is the on page 29 is the update from the Community Transportation Advisory Committee, and it provides a summary of the current actions that happened. And in July was the last meeting, and there was an overview of state transportation funding programs by Danny Plogger from Virginians for High-Speed Rail. There's a summary of that presentation there, as well as an overview of CBTA funding, which I work directly with Lisa Guthrie from the Virginia Transit Association. She's also the chair of the CTAC at this time, to provide an update on the CBTA and where things stand with the current round of funding. If anyone is interested, I'm happy to make these presentations available. We also have it recorded on our YouTube channel. Quick plug for that, if anyone wants to actually watch the proceedings of the meeting. So, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. That's the Secretary's report.
Okay. Board members, any follow-up questions to the Secretary's report? All right, seeing none, we'll move right along into new business. I think we're doing well on time. Mr. Parsons, you want to lead us B1, Safe Streets for All, the competitive grants? I think we have some action plan grants and implementation grant.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I apologize. The printed agenda that's in the room is an old one. It was updated and was posted again on our website, if you've seen it there. So I'm going to share that on the screen here. Those at home that are following along can see it, and then I will drive the boat here. So there was a change, and I'll get into this under the new business item B1. We have 3 items for consideration through the Safe Streets for All competitive grant. This is a grant program that was developed, and I'm just going to go into the staff report. This is get there. This is a grant program that was developed as one of the many competitive grants through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this is a program that we are moving forward with in cooperation.
Page 30.
Yeah. Okay, this is through the bipartisan infrastructure law. The Safe Streets and Roads for All is a discretionary competitive grant program with $5 billion in appropriated funds over the next 5 years. So it is funded for 5 years. In this current fiscal year, FY22, up to $1 billion is available And it funds regional, local, and tribal initiatives to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. There are a number of different categories, actually two main categories that are fundable through Safe Streets for All. The first is development of action plans, and the second is to actually move forward with implementation projects. The action plan is something that is kind of sets forth what the projects are. It really identifies the priority projects for the applying entity and jumps through a lot of different hoops in terms of identifying the data that prioritizes those projects, talks about the impacts and the potential changes that could occur through the implementation of this action plan, and then sets up the applying locality or region for application for implementation grants. So we have had numerous discussions with our jurisdictions on where everybody stands. As you know, in March, I believe, of FY20 of this last year of 22, the TPO adopted a regional safety plan. That safety plan is a great first step. It's very similar to an action plan, but it falls short in a couple key areas. First of all, it does not identify priority projects, which is really something that the action plan has to have to qualify for this grant. And it doesn't move forward with some of the key issues that are needed to make this grant application successful. The implementation grant is something that everybody obviously wants to get to. That's the end game, is to win money to build projects. But before we get there, if we're going through this program to do that, we have to have certified action plans. So at this time, there are a couple different requests before you today. The first is that the City of Richmond has a very successful and nationally recognized Vision Zero plan. That plan can be certified as the action plan for the city, just for the jurisdiction of the City of Richmond. The initial grant opportunity that the city wants to apply for right now is going to be focused on an implementation grant to put projects in place that help satisfy everything that's set forth in the Vision Zero plan. As staff has reviewed this and talked with the city, it's a no-brainer. This is something that the TPO should support and endorse as an application moving forward. Henrico County and Chesterfield County are both interested in applying for action plan grants that help establish those local priorities at this time. A lot of the data that was developed as part of our regional safety plan at the TPO will be used in developing those applications. But the counties are moving things forward right now with establishing those priorities and moving through the next steps to make a certifiable action plan. We also strongly considered the development of a regional application. Staff is really focused on using an opportunity like this to provide services for all 9 of our jurisdictions. Not everyone is able to commit the individual staff time that might be necessary to develop an action plan application, hire a consultant, do all the things that are necessary to put together a competitive bid. And we strongly considered applying for a regional action plan during this cycle, but at the end of the day, with the timelines that are in place, these applications are due by September 15th. It's a very short turnaround. We have a lot of questions for the Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration partners on the things that we could include in a regional application and the things that are not able to be included. I think at the end of the day, we think it's better to wait one cycle and come back and see how the Henrico, Chesterfield, and Richmond applications go, and then put together a more comprehensive action plan grant for the entire region because we do want to provide those services. We think that's the role that the TPO should be having, especially in an application like this. So the action before you today, the recommendation is that the TPO Policy Board positions the region for its best available opportunity to secure federal funding through this application process. The recommendation is to approve the implementation grant application by the City of Richmond that builds from its adopted Vision Zero plan, and to approve the action plan grant applications for Chesterfield and Henrico counties as requested. In addition, staff requests a commitment from the Policy Board to fully consider and support the development of a regional action plan grant application for fiscal year 24 next year through approval of the following resolution as presented. Resolved that the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization Policy Board endorses the following applications for Safe Streets and Roads for All competitive grant funds: a local project endorsement of an action plan grant for Chesterfield County, a local project endorsement of an action plan grant for Henrico County, and a local project endorsement of an implementation grant for the City of Richmond. And be it further resolved that the Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization Policy Board supports the creation of a full regional action plan and the development of an application for the next round of the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. Mr. Chair, we think this positions us for the most success across the board, and would appreciate action by the policy board this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Okay, I'll entertain a motion, but also we can have discussion. That doesn't matter to me. Are there any
I'd like
questions?
to motion, Mr. Chair, that we would approve the recommendations relative to these three actual applications.
Thank you, Dr. Newell. Okay, motion.
Second,
Who had the second over here? Yeah. Thank you, John Hodges.
No, I was really pointing at him.
Oh, David Wood, I didn't hear
I'm sorry.
it came from that direction. So you have the movement. So thank you, Dr. Newell. Thank you, David Wood. Okay, any discussion? Ms. Lascolette?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I absolutely support these, so this is not in opposition to this, but my question is, are we coordinating this to a master plan? So all of the recommendations here, I think we've got 2 grants that are going to establish some priorities, and then the Richmond one is going to implement. So my question is, are we dovetailing all this so that it all matches from the local up?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer that.
Sure, yeah, I think that's probably going to be the tone of this discussion too, but Mr. Parsons, yes.
Absolutely. We intend, and that was part of that, be it further resolved, that
Right.
next year, we take our existing regional safety plan
Right.
and supplement that so it will qualify as a certifiable action plan for the region. We want to take the work that is being done this year by Chesterfield, Henrico, and the city, and make sure that the priority projects that are identified through those applications are included and don't conflict with the work that comes out of the overall regional plan. So we want it all to work together to come out into the next year's cycle with a regional plan that collects everything and makes it a strong contender for funding next year.
So follow your mind. So we are approving plans now, but we don't have a master plan. So we'll fold these in like a retroactive process?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Ms. Lascolette, we're endorsing the.
No, I know what you were doing, but I'm just saying the
Okay.
actual items that they're trying to implement, does that match what we want to do regionally? That's my question. And does it matter?
That's sort of a policy board question, does it matter? So any other? Mr. Carroll.
So I understand that certainly what we're doing here, and I wholeheartedly agree, but the next question comes is once we identify these projects and we submit for the federal funding, those projects then also going to be subject to submission in the future for smart scale? Or is this just going to be a totally separate pot to be utilized? And the reason I ask is because we've approved a long-term transportation plan. And certainly I think we could add this as an addendum to that for the safety portion of it, what we're trying to accomplish. But As those projects get identified, and we put in for the federal funding, we may also see a need for those projects, if they don't get fully funded, to come up with money somewhere else, for example, through the Cbta or through Smart Scale. And so that's just something we probably need to be mindful of in the future. Just want to bring that up.
Good point. Any response or comments to that?
I agree.
Okay, good. All right, following along sort of on Ms. Lascolette's, and you also, if you saw the paper version, we have a TPO project action plan, and Mr. Parsons explained that, the timing is such. A couple of thoughts that I had, when I first saw this, I thought, why doesn't we just adopt, this body just adopted something just in this calendar year that is not, doesn't make the cut to get an implementation grant. So that's why I asked Mr. Parsons to explain, and Chet, you said it does not ID priority projects. And then you said it does not move forward with key issues. I would like you to expand on what those key issues are, because it sounds like if you're asking us to support, in the second part of this resolution, if you're asking us to support the creation of a full regional action plan for, 2 years from now? Is that when the next, or a year from now?
No,
A year from now.
the intent is that we would apply a year from now.
A year from now.
And then that funding through this application process would help us develop the plan.
And because the Safe Streets component, the bipartisan infrastructure bill has it set up so that in a year from now, there's gonna be another round. And if the law doesn't get changed when, after this election, then, so there's a window. All right, so we're looking at this window. My question is, and I'll just phrase it this way, maybe not the best way to say it, but it feels to me we're pulling up short if we're asking for an action plan grant. Because you said in your presentation, the implementation grant is where you want to be. So why don't we use this year to consider putting the pieces into our current plan that'll tee us up to do an implementation grant application a year from now? It's a question, just a question.
We would have to pay for it. That's the key thing right now. The grant is what we're looking for to get the money to pay for it.
Fair enough. Yeah, so I guess when we did our plan that we approved in early '22, we probably didn't know what, all these elements that would make us eligible for an implementation grant.
That's correct. The law wasn't being developed yet. We did have extended discussions about using that planning process to identify priority projects. And at that point, the jurisdictions weren't all on the same page, and we weren't ready to move forward with that type of commitment. So, but it is the foundation, and there's nothing about the existing safety plan that needs to be changed. It just needs to be added to.
Okay, well, that goes back to your cost question then.
Yes.
Item 1 is identify priority projects. That shouldn't be a big cost. It's just going to be.
It's a huge cost.
Okay. All right.
The other key factor is it needs to include extensive public engagement, which we did not do as part of that safety plan. So those are both huge costs and time commitments.
Fair enough. Do you want to just go ahead and field the second part of my question? What are the key issues that this plan is missing? I mean, I guess what you're saying is if we do follow the recommendation, we'll just be looking to get the action plan grant next year to close these gaps that you've described, priority projects. Okay. All right. Do you have at your fingertips what key issues are missing in our?
I happen to have, and I can hand this out after the meeting, the self-certification eligibility worksheet that was provided as part of the grant application window. And this is really what we use to identify whether our existing safety plan qualified or not. So there were a number of yes or no questions with detail that we had to answer. And the ones that we had to answer no to, did the plan development include engagement with the public and relevant stakeholders? No. Did it include the incorporation of information received from that engagement? Did it include intergovernmental cooperation and collaboration? I think we can answer yes for that. But the public engagement was a major missing piece.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Mr. Hodges?
Just to understand, it looks to me like the cities implementation grant application has been through some public action by city council and other things, whereas the county's requests are really not formulated yet. So is there a distinction between the two? Is there a suggestion that we endorse the city's application and hold on the county's?
I think the request is that we endorse them all. And my understanding, one of the thoughts I had before was, would a regional application be more competitive? That was really my starting point.
I see.
And in asking Mr. Parsons about that, before this, he talked to as he said, he talked to all the counties, and Chesterfield and Henrico have made a lot of commitments already. They're doing a lot of work. You've got a lot going on. I think they're ready for the action plan grants. I don't know if anybody from Chesterfield and Henrico wants to, or Mr. Parsons wants to speak to the gaps you're trying to close to get to implementation, but I think the request before us is to endorse all of these.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I mean, in discussions with Henrico and Chesterfield staff, the purpose of these applications is to develop that detail. So if they win this grant, showing the need to develop the desire to develop this action plan, they'll use the funding through this grant to develop the detail of what the plan includes, prioritize the projects, do the public engagement, all of the things that are necessary to be up for implementation funds.
And I can assure you that, at least speaking for Chesterfield, we can identify some issues that need solving. I'm looking at Barbara, she's nodding her head, so
Absolutely.
no problem there.
Absolutely. Okay, any further discussion before we have a roll call vote? All right, nobody's raising their hand online.
Mr. Chairman, I would
Yes, sir.
say that from a Chesterfield's perspective as well, along with our chair, is that, we're very much committed to a data-driven situation whereby we solve the issue at hand where there have been safety issues and concerns, and certainly we're focused on that and committed to safety as one of our highest priorities and values, if you will, relative to this grant. And the money has been approved, it's just a question of how getting it at this point.
And if I may, this is Pat O'Bannon.
Yes, ma'am.
In Henrico, we've already begun part of this process by striping wide streets with bike lanes and doing crosswalks. And one of the projects, one of the things they're promoting is to do it without spending too much money. And so the cost of paint is cheap. And we're putting in striped crosswalks in places. In other words, we're starting on it already, but this will help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Bannon. There's no further discussion. Ms. Firestone, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Atkins?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Mr. Holland?
Aye.
Mr. Winslow?
Aye.
Chair Lumpkins?
Aye.
Ms. Lascolette?
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson?
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Addison?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
She answered the roll.
Okay. Dr. Newbill?
Aye.
Ms. I'm sorry, Ms. Dean? We have Ms. Dean? Ms. Dean? And Mr. Mayor?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you very much, everybody. So next item from Mr. Parsons. If you would-
Yes, sir. This is actually an item that Mr. Bushing at the podium is going to cover, and it's related to Smart Scale Round 5 and an endorsement of a project for Irrigation County.
Mr. Bushing.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This item is a smart scale endorsement. If you recall, this board took action back in July to endorse all of the locality and transit agency projects for smart scale round 5. At that time, Goochland County staff had provided us with a list of 4 final projects for this round of applications. And there's been a change in between that time period and the final application deadline. So the county priorities had to shift a little bit, and so they need an additional project endorsed for the application. So there were 5 pre-apps, only 4 could move forward. We need to switch which one is this for. The trick on this one is today is the deadline. So we do need action today, so we can get that submitted to Vdot. So the project is the I-64 Ashland Road Interchange project. So the reason it wasn't originally included, there was Cbta funding for the project, so it didn't seem like it needed to go through the smart scale process. As you all may be aware, there is a new fulfillment center to be located at that interchange. And so reanalysis with the traffic impact analysis has suggested that it needs to be a bigger project. It needs to be a 4-lane diverging diamond, which comes at a higher cost. And because of that increased cost, Goochland is seeking to go through the smart scale process to find the additional funding to move the project forward. This was identified very late in the process as the last 2 weeks of the smart scale window that county staff worked with Vdot to get this application prepared. So this is an evolving situation, and this is the first opportunity we've got to bring it to the board. TAC reviewed this request at their last meeting in August and recommended endorsing the project. Staff agrees with that recommendation. Again, this is just endorsing it to move forward through the smart scale scoring process. This doesn't commit the board to any action. So the requested action today is a resolution that the RRTPO Policy Board endorses the I-64 at Ashland Road Interchange Project as a Goochland County application for smart scale round 5. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Winslow, second by Mr. Williams. Any questions of Mr. Bush? Thank you, Miles.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Atkins?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Aye.
Mr. Holland?
Aye.
Mr. Winslow?
Aye.
Chair Lumpkins?
Aye.
Ms. Lascallette?
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson?
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon?
Aye.
Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Addison?
Aye.
Dr. Newbill?
Aye.
Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Firestone. All right, last item in new business, railroad crossing elimination program in Ashland, Hanover County. Mr. Parsons, you'll lead us through that?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. This is another new competitive grant funding program that has been made available through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Be prepared, before I get into this, be prepared over the next year to hear a lot from me about the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's gonna be a lot of competitive programs that we are going to be eligible for, and we really want to be competitive and bring money into the region. So this is kind of the first month where we've dipped our toes into this, but we are very excited about bringing some opportunities to the region. So this railroad crossing elimination program is through the Federal Railroad Administration. It funds lots of different types of projects. On the screen are the eligible project criteria. But in particular, I wanted to bring your attention to page 43 in the agenda, which is focused on Vaughn Road grade separation. We have been working, staff have been working with Mr. Selleck and Ms. Dubinsky at DRPT to assess the competitive nature of this project in particular, and the likelihood of receiving funds through the program. We feel really good about it and are asking today to move forward with endorsing the application. And I'll read through the highlights of the resolution that's in your packet. At the July 7th meeting, the TPO Policy Board identified the Vaughn Road Railroad grade crossing as a safety concern for citizens, passenger and freight rail operators, school buses, and emergency services. And this is some of the background. A grade separation of the Vaughn Road intersect crossing will provide a connection for vehicular traffic, including emergency vehicles, between the eastern and western portions of the town of Ashland in the event that the existing crossings in the town are blocked due to a stopped train. A grade separation of the Vaughn Road crossing will reduce traffic queuing, leading to reduced vehicle emissions and increased network fluidity. This is a part of the completed DC to RBA environmental impact statement. A record of decision was issued by the FRA in 2019. The TPO and the CBTA have indicated that the Von-Red grade separation is a regional priority. And when the CBTA took action in April on its round 2 regional funding, $4.6 million in CBTA regional funds were awarded to this grade separated crossing project because it did compete and it did show that it was a competitive project. The town of Ashland has indicated that the grade separation is a local priority by committing $300,000 in CBTA local funds. We are aware that Hanover County is considering the same thing, same type of commitment this month, and that the policy board supports, now therefore be it resolved that the policy board supports an application through the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, utilizing the available CBTA funds committed as local match for leveraging federal funds. Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions. We feel really good about this project, especially using the CBTA commitment of almost $5 million as leverage. This is what the CBTA was created to do, and we're excited to see where this goes.
Chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Williams moves to approve. John Hodges, second. Discussion, Mr. Hodges?
I was just gonna endorse what Chet said. Just this last month, this project was dropped from round 5 as not being eligible. And with the help of RRTPO and others, they come up with an alternative funding source very quickly, and we appreciate that support. And I'll put this out as a candidate for the definition of regionalism. 2 jurisdictions allocating local funds in addition to regional funds. I think that helps. I'm not trying to preach.
Let's throw that out.
Thank you so much. Hope you support the motion.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will add to that as far as Hanover is concerned, this overpass is for emergency services primarily, and that also includes Hanover County, not just the town of Ashland. So it is a mutual.
Absolutely. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Atkins?
Aye.
Mr. Carroll?
Very happy to say aye.
Mr. Holland?
Aye, enthusiastically.
Mr. Winslow? Aye. Chair Lumpkins?
Aye.
Ms. Lascallette?
Aye.
Vice Chair Peterson?
Aye.
Ms. O'Bannon?
Aye.
Mr. Thornton?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Addison?
Aye.
Dr. Newbill?
Aye.
And Mr. Mann?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Rolling right along, agency and committee reports. Mr. Parsons, update from CBTA?
Yes, thank you very much. We're excited to share this update at the July 15th Cbta meeting. This was our annual meeting, and there were election of officers and committee appointments. Mr. Carroll and Mayor Stoney were elected as chair and vice chair for FY23. Mr. Peterson and Ms. Page were appointed to serve on the Finance Committee, along with Mr. Carroll, Mayor Stoney, and Mr. Thornton. And there was a discussion of a new committee being formed to explore options for leadership rotation. And there was also an appointment of new CBTA members to the authority. Capital Region Airport Commission, CEO Perry Miller was added to the CBTA membership roster as an ex officio member. And Delegate Roxanne Robinson was appointed as the representative from the House of Delegates to the CBTA. The authority thanks Delegate McQuinn for her dedication and commitment to the CBTA as it was moved forward. August 3rd, there was a Fall Line Working Group meeting. This is a regular ongoing meeting to work with Vdot on design guidelines and design build scenarios. We have 2 design build scenarios that are currently in development for the northern and southern sections of the Fall Line. August 8th, the Technical Advisory Committee reviewed and accepted our annual certification of expenditures by local members. and reviewed the expected plans for this coming fiscal year. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. It is in the agenda packets, and it's an exciting list of projects that everyone's considering being used through CBTA funds. The Finance Committee met on August 10th and got an update on the investment portfolio and discussed briefly some potential investment strategies moving forward. And then we have upcoming meetings starting in 2 weeks with the TAC on the 12th, Finance Committee on the 14th. And then there's an update to this. The CBTA meeting has been changed from September 30th to September 23rd. So it's moving up a week. Same time, same place, Friday the 23rd will be the meeting of the authority.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons.
Chair,
Mr. Carroll.
one other addition to that report, and that is, can you tell them who the new chair of finance and vice chair of finance?
Yes. Yes, we have a chair of finance, Mr. Pearson.
Vice chairs.
And Ms. Page, as a new member of finance, was also put in the seat of being vice chair.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
I think that's in there, yeah. And thank all of you, Mr. Carroll, and everybody for service on this important authority. All right, is somebody online from GRTC that wishes to?
Ms. Torres, I believe.
Ms. Torres?
She's on mute.
Yeah.
I emailed her to ask if she
Okay.
had a presentation and she has.
All right, if she has anything, we'll move to, I don't think Ms. Dean is with us, right, okay. So, anybody from DRPT?
Yes.
Oh, there, right here. Right here.
Good morning. So for the month of September, I want to highlight some of the work that we are working on over at DRPT. First of all, September is Discover Transit Month. So we'll be spending this month through social media posts and events to help inform our Virginians again about transportation options and encouraging the use of local transit services for their commutes, their travel, and exploring their communities. So we hope this promotional effort will help increase ridership, which has decreased due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We also hope it will raise awareness of options that are out there, as well as incentives and highlighting many benefits of public transportation. Some promotional events that we will be hosting includes the Tri-Transit Pledge, which will allow participants to enter a contest to win either free Virginia Breeze bus line tickets or Amtrak Northeast regional tickets. And then if you record commutes on our Commute VA app, you can also be automatically entered to win a $100 gift card. So not too bad, right? We do have a website for the Discover Transit Month that is at transitva.gov. My second item is related to our Transit Ridership Incentive Program. I know I've provided updates in previous meetings about this pilot program. We're excited to announce that we are opening a mid-cycle funding opportunity that is actually applications open today, September 1st. This will be focusing on the regional routes. So this is only for regions including Blacksburg, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Hampton Roads, Lynchburg, Northern Virginia, Richmond, and Roanoke. Eligible projects are any projects that are benefiting commuting patterns using transit. So it's usually between targeted regions focusing on development or improvement of regionally significant transit routes that can be express routes or commuter routes, for example, and then prioritization of transit in regional streetscapes through bus-only lanes, prioritized lighting, or any other amenities. There's information on the application guidelines, and applications will close October 3rd, so there is a very tight window, about roughly a month to apply. You may submit any letters of support and other supporting documentation by October 21st, so there's a little bit more time for that. And if there's any questions about the mid-cycle application, that is available on the DRPT website on the TRIP webpage, which I'll provide in the meeting minutes. There is also a contact for the program manager, which is Lauren Bagnato, for more information. So if you have a project in mind, please, I encourage you all to apply. We are underway with our Virginia Statewide Rail Plan. As a reminder, this is a plan that is required by FRA to be updated every 4 years, and it provides long-term guidance throughout the Commonwealth in terms of rail needs for both people, communities, and commerce. So we will be hosting, not they, a virtual public meeting on Tuesday, September 27th from 6 to 7. This will be an opportunity to learn more about what the update for the rail plan entails, as well as public comment before it goes to the Ctb this winter. I will provide the registration link for the public meeting, and then there is information on the DRPT website on the statewide rail plan and its progress. And last, would be remiss to not keep plugging on the Virginia Transit Equity and Modernization Study. We are finalizing the work on the action plan, and we hope to present it in early fall to CTB. I anticipate probably either September or October, depending on the agenda. And with that, that is my update. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dubinsky. A lot going on at DRPT.
Try to stay busy.
You are. Any questions? All right, we'll jump. Mr. Mayor, we'll come to you in a second. I think Ms. Torres, if she can unmute, she has an update from GRTC.
Yes, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just to kind of add on what Chet already mentioned, we are almost through with our phase 1 for our micro transit study. We have a meeting set on the 7th to work with the MPO TAC Public Transportation Working Group to continue to refine the boundaries and prioritize the recommended zones. And that will lead into our phase 2 study of working through implementation steps for the prioritized zones. We hope to get proposals back on September 12th to kick off the North-South BRT study, hopefully within the next couple of months. And within the month, we plan on breaking ground for construction of our temporary transfer station in downtown Richmond. One last thing is that we did get awarded $11 million in federal funds to go towards 19 CNG vehicles to replace some of our outdated diesel vehicles, as well as $1 million to go towards demoing a building that's dilapidated on one of our parcels to expand our bus storage lot.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Torres? Comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Williams?
Quick question. When does GRTC project that they will have completed the micro-transportation studies that are affecting primarily the rural jurisdictions? Do we have a target date for that?
The goal is to be ready to pilot in FY24. So we're hoping that as far as next steps, we meet with the Public Transportation Working Group, go through the priorities, then go to our board, and then be able to go back to Cbta to kind of give the list. And from there, actually go through implementation steps to get it there for FY24.
So you're actually looking for FY24 to do a pilot. My question was, when will you have completed the study, let's just say a requirements definition, and what is possible with micro-transportation in the rural localities? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think that we would plan to close the study within the next month for this phase 1, which will end up with the list of prioritized zones. So right now we have a recommendation of basically one zone in every single jurisdiction and working with those jurisdictions to refine that zone, and then working with the region to kind of identify what are the priorities from all of the jurisdictions to do several pilots.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes.
So that prompts a question, and I know when Mr. Parsons said earlier in our meeting that the study was wrapping up, I was wondering, when GRTC, we had a study done, OIP did a study in one of our areas in Goochland, and when they were looking at the GRTC data, we just didn't meet any of the numbers, the volume numbers, and of course the way they drew the maps made it kind of a predetermined outcome, and they didn't include populated areas. So but you sound like you're committing to identify a zone where microtransit is a potential in every jurisdiction, and jurisdictions aren't going to get eliminated just because you can't draw a line that meets a certain number of people that would utilize it?
Correct. The way we're approaching it is that there's different purposes, just like fixed route, whether it's a lifeline or in a dense area, that we're looking at it from microtransit, that there'll be different metrics depending on whether it's a rural program or more of a dense program. So we'll be looking at less riders per hour and the cost associated with it. And we would like to pilot the different areas to see what success would look like.
Mr. Winslow?
Mr. Chairman, I know we have representation on now an equalized GRTC board, which is a fantastic achievement for the region. And at the risk of just having a little bit of overlap, since we are all involved in these topics, I would just ask that staff, once that report is available, that be sent out to this body separately, just so we can take a look at it and be aware of what that report says.
Yes.
Sounds good. Yeah, does that sound good, Ms. Torres?
Yes, it does.
Anything else on this important topic?
If I may, a follow-up question. Are you working with the Department of Rail and Public Transportation in any way in coordinating, what's possible with, transportation alternatives in different rural jurisdictions with different populations, different densities, knowing that there's no one solution and that there's just an untold number of different ways transportation alternatives are being met across the country? Are you coordinating with them in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. Always conversing with DRPT, but also looking at additional grant opportunities that would support more rurals, not limiting us to just fixed route. Microtransit is one, but I know, for example, there's others who have a need of not necessarily an express route, but getting from maybe a rural area to downtown. So looking at all those alternatives, and then we'll come to you guys kind of with the various recommendations.
I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Torres. Excellent update. Somebody online have a question?
Chairman, yeah, I do have a question. It's a little bit complicated, but about a year ago, the city of Richmond voted that they, in order to reduce their carbon dioxide, their CO2 levels, they were going to close down the natural gas utility in about 10 years. The buses that you're transferring over to compressed natural gas, what do you plan to use, or how do you plan to use those in the future if the natural gas utility is shut down?
Okay, Ms. Torres.
I am not familiar, I guess, as far as that specific date and how the impact is.
Right.
Well, they did pass a resolution in to work toward closing down the natural gas utility.
Yeah, Mr. Addison?
Yes, to Ms. O'Bannon's point, that City of Richmond passed legislation as part of a sustainability resilience package of looking at ways to be more sustainable and less dependent on certain energy sources, and that was the push. The goal, of course, as the resolution stated, was to look at alternatives other than natural gas. There is no expected timeline, deadline, et cetera. It was a requested plan for how we could achieve that. I do know from conversations across the country and with GRTC exploring future options for transit being electric or hydrogen, which are new technologies coming down the pipe. But of course, I think be on the table for GRTC as those become available moving forward. So that transition to whatever that future sustainable source of power or energy would be, we can get there together. So I don't have any plans to see the utility shut down in the next foreseeable future, at least for the life cycle of the buses being purchased today. So just wanted to provide that update, but it is a point worth clarifying of where we are going for powering our buses in the future.
If I may, to help out in the discussion. So DRPT is also initiating a statewide, we're calling it an emission reduction transition plan. So we'll be looking at throughout the Commonwealth for all of our transit agencies, how we can assist them in terms of exploring alternative fuels vehicles. So not just electrification, but to Mr. Addison's point about hydrogen and then CNG, and in ways just to be able to help right size for our transit agencies. Not everyone should pursue an electric vehicle, but to also assist our agencies that may already have some fleet that might have some mix. So for GRTC's example, I know we've had discussions about a zero emission plan that may look out to more 2045, 2050. And so we'll be providing the technical assistance to be able to help them identify that. We are also working with the Vdot Office of Sustainable Transportation, and they have some initiatives that are underway, including a resiliency plan, as well as a NEVI plan, which is the electric vehicle infrastructure plan. So I'd be glad in the future we can try to coordinate to provide more information on what we're seeing in terms of the transit field or transit industry in terms of how we're looking at alternative fuel sources for our vehicles. But I would say that it is a great success that GRTC was one of 2 agencies within the state to get funding through the no emissions grant program with FTA. The other was the Suffolk Transit. So I'm an incrementalist, so I always think that something is better than nothing in this case. So in the meantime, to Ms. O'Bannon's question about where we are with CNGs, we haven't heard anything in terms of any concerns about natural gas and sort of where that's going in terms of the future. But I don't anticipate in terms of a useful life cycle of our vehicles that we'll see anything happen within the next 10 to 15 years. So hopefully we won't see anything drop off in the meantime. But I'd be glad to have a follow-up conversation with Ms. O'Bannon if you wanted to discuss more about that.
Thank you again. Thank you, Ms. Torres. Thank you, Ms. Dubinsky, for the follow-up. If we're ready to, I think we saved the best for last, right, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
Mr.
Chair. Hold on to your seat. Uh-oh.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir, Mr.
As
Hammond.
relates to the micro transportation, one zones to each locality, is any consideration being given to the possibility of those funds being diverted to the locality to strengthen the transportation systems that they already have?
Ms. Torres, did you hear that question?
I did. The plan for the pilots is to use federal dollars and not actually utilizing any CBTA funds. If the program and those particular zones seem like they were sustainable, then we would come back and through our regional public transportation plan, identify additional funding sources if we could, but it would be per approval of CBTA to use the funds within the regional public transportation plan for that effort. So we are not utilizing that for the pilot.
Thank you again. Mr. Mann.
Thank you, sir. I'll start off with the July CTB meeting. They had workshop presentations on time, on budget, fiscal year 22 project development and delivery performance, pavement and bridge performance, federal transportation performance management, and they also had an update on or presented the CBTA Fall Line Trail standard project agreement for the first section. Moving forward on that. The action meeting, they approved the fiscal year 23 through 28 6-year improvement program transfers for May and June, which included several items of note for this group. 3 Chopped Road widening to 4 lanes project in Henrico County received a transfer. Shared use path along Courthouse Road project in Charles City County received a transfer, and the widening of Route 10 Bermuda Triangle Road to Meadowville Road in Chesterfield County received a transfer. They also approved the addition of projects to the 6-year improvement program for fiscal year 23 to 28. And a project of note for this group was the installation of the traffic signal preemption equipment at multiple locations in Goochland County. And last action item I had on here was they approved and revised the fiscal year 23 annual budgets for the Commonwealth Transportation Fund, DRPT, and Vdot. So they all have revised operating budgets for fiscal year 23. Next CTB meeting will be September 20th and 21st, and it will be located in Stanton this month. Smart Scale Round 5, final application period closed on August 1st, and all applications have been submitted. Richmond District had a final of 90 applications. Validation is now underway for those. Richmond District Planning will be facilitating all the communication and coordination with the applicants regarding the validation and scoring. VDOT staff greatly appreciates the coordination of the local staff as we go through the process. It's been working really well, and we appreciate the cooperation as we try to validate and get ready for scoring. Scoring is anticipated to be complete in December, so we should know some preliminary results come December. Fall Line Trail, VDOT design build packages. We're still moving forward with the northern section design build that is on schedule for advertisement by the end of this calendar year. Again, that standard project agreement is in front of the CTB, and we're hoping for approval at the September meeting. And we actually asked for a blanket approval for all these CBTA Fall Line Trail standard project agreements, so we're hoping to receive that and not have to go back through a 2-month process for each subsequent project. The southern section design build is on schedule for advertisement in mid-23. We are working with CBTA Fall Line Working Group to assist in prioritizing the remaining unfunded segments of the trail, so we can come forward back to CBTA. Hopefully the working group can with a plan of how they want to advance the additional projects. The design guidelines for Fall Line Trail are in the final steps now. We definitely plan to have all that wrapped up before the RFP goes out for the first design build section before the end of the calendar year. There are no scheduled public hearings or willingness to hold public hearings within the TPO study area at this time. And the last thing I have to note is this will likely be my last meeting as a representative of Vdot at this organization. I've taken a new position at central office, so I'll be leaving Richmond District effective September 10th. So it's been a pleasure to work with all.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Williams?
Mr. Mann, thank you for your service, and it's also good to know that we have people in high places now.
Don't forget about us.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. As always, y'all all have my phone number, so if you need something, please reach out.
Be careful.
No questions for Mr. Mayor. Thank you again. Future meeting topics, that's in the package, and GRTC microtransit study, that's on the list I see, and so that, I imagine that'll be coming up. Any member comments? As we wrap up here.
Mr. Chair, I'm not a member, but I would like to add on to Mr. Mann's comment about the fall line, or his update about the fall line. I know that at least Enrico and the city of Richmond have upcoming community meetings regarding fall line improvements in the jurisdictions. So I encourage everyone to get plugged into those. We do have information if you'd like to get more on that and share it. And we're going to be helping staff those meetings at least in the city. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be another step in moving the fall line into implementation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Hanover County, should point out, Hanover County did endorse the alignment of the fall line trail for VDOT's request at our meeting last week. So we're excited, and I'm sure Enrico is excited with us to get this first phase of it underway.
Anybody else? All right, next meeting is October 6th. Remember, the executive committee will meet in October. Please join us if you're on the executive committee, and even if you're not, we hope to discuss, like I talked about earlier. I saw Dr. Nuba when she signed off like 10 minutes ago. She said she wished everybody a happy Labor Day. I'm gonna do the same to the entire group. Everybody have a great long weekend. Thank you, and I'll see you next month. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Great presentation, sir. I'm staying. One question.